Hi, my name's Lachlan, and I have quadriplegic cerebral palsy. It's been a while since I talked at any length about current events here in South Africa, so that's what I'm going to do today. Now, if you've been following me for any time at all, you will be at least roughly familiar with a lot of the things I'm going to talk about, but there are relevant occurrences taking place at the moment, which I think it's worth talking about. So that's what I'm going to do. So, South Africa, as a state, is about to embark on what the government refers to as the National Dialogue. Supposedly, this will be a series of events intended to bring South Africans together to discuss the challenges we all face in 2025. That's the government's spin on it, anyway. In reality, what this is yet another opportunity for ANC politicians to line their own pockets with massive amounts of public money, as they often do. And when I say massive amounts of public money, I mean it, because the budget for this so called national dialogue is just shy of 1 billion rand. That's billion with a B. And when everything is said and done, I'm sure that the budget will surpass a billion, as everything this government does tends to run over budget by design. One of the other reasons it's become so difficult to take life seriously in South Africa is that, depending on who you listen to, whether it's the government themselves or the people on the ground, like myself, you will get an entirely different picture of South Africa and what life is like here. If you listen to our government, particularly those within the ANC, because just to clarify, the ANC is no longer the dominant ruling party because it lost its parliamentary majority in the most recent national elections and now is simply a partner within the government of national unity, as it's known. Now, in a sense, the ANC hasn't changed its behavior at all because the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is the top ANC member. And even though they lost their parliamentary majority, since then, the ANC has been governing as it always has, as though there are no other people that have to be taken into account or listened to. But the weird thing is that as life in South Africa has gotten worse, they, and by they I mean the politicians, have intensified their propaganda. And if you listen to them, South Africa is just around the corner from being an emerging powerhouse, globally speaking. The ANC, to this day, positions itself as the party of Nelson Mandela, and they consider themselves to be moral leaders and global peacemakers. The ANC is constantly involving itself in international conflicts which have no relevance to the lives of ordinary South Africans, such as the conflict between Israel and Palestine, or more accurately, Israel and Hamas, or the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine. And our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is constantly giving interviews and press briefings in which he claims that other world leaders look to South Africa as the example of how to make peace and to let go of past grievances. The fact is, South Africa is an extremely divided nation, and we are not in any sense unified, or at peace. Here are some basic realities about life in South Africa. We have some of the most violent criminals in the world, with one of the highest rates of violent crime, including sexual assault, across the entire planet. We also have among the highest rates of chronic unemployment, not only in Africa, but throughout the world. Our infrastructure is failing. Our road networks are not safe. We don't have a functional rail network. The national electrical grid is unstable and constantly at risk of failing. Yet, the ANC will address none of these issues, and if they do, they promise that within a year's time, everything will be solved. This is what they say every year. It is the empty promise that they continue to fall back on, and somehow their supporters continue to believe it. Now, this is not to say that the ANC is the only problem in South Africa, because other political parties, such as the Economic Freedom Fighters led by Julius Malema and the Umkhonto weSizwe Party led by former president and former ANC member Jacob Zuma, are even more radical in their approaches than the ANC is. So, although on one hand it is a good thing that the ANC is no longer the majority party in South Africa's government, it's also a bad thing because it opens the door to even more radical politics by legitimately crazy people. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic when I call them crazy, I'd like to point out to you that Julius Malema, by his own description, is a communist who wants to nationalize every key aspect of South African life and who openly calls for the death of white farmers. Jacob Zuma, on the other hand, is an out and out tribalist and a Zulu in the worst sense of the word. Because if he had his way, what he would do with South Africa would be to return it to the state of a tribal homeland and to abolish any sort of Western law and return entirely to tribal custom, which in reality means that the most violent person is the one who will stay on top, because that's what tribal law is. Now, I'll probably get called racist for saying that, but I don't give a fuck at this point because it's true. And so, this is what life in South Africa has become. Daily, our politicians lie to us as citizens and to the rest of the world as to the condition of our country and the challenges we face, while ordinary South Africans know the truth and essentially do whatever we can to get by in life while avoiding government interference as much as possible. And that includes having to look after our own personal safety, because in South Africa, both our police service and our national military are underfunded, undertrained, corrupt, and inept. And this isn't just my word. This is the word of several high-ranking officials within those organizations. And it's funny because whenever a high-ranking official, either within the SAPS or the South African National Defence Force, actually comes out and publicly says what we all know to be true, the ANC throws a massive tantrum and questions their credentials and their standing within those organizations, because they don't actually care how bad things get as long as no one talks about them. So I hope that this rant of mine has at least been of some use to you. Look after yourselves, take care of each other, and for now, farewell.